Again, really proud of the win. That gives us a winning record in the Big 12 conference play heading into the last 2 weeks of the season. Proud of how our guys handled adversity, and proud of the fact that we have definitely turned the page and we are full steam ahead in preparations to try to win a road conference game again this season, and in a very hostile environment against a top 25 opponent. Updates, offensive players of the game. We had in Derek Kerstetter, who had, I believe, 7 knockdown blocks, graded out 87%, and then Lorenzo Joe. So 2 very polar opposites of the spectrum from an experience standpoint, but 2 guys that played really well for us. And then defensively, the player of the game was Antoine Davis. Questions?
Start up front with Brian.
Do you expect Connor to play this week?
Barring a setback, yeah, I think so. Practiced non-contact last week. Practiced against the scout team, but in shorts and helmets yesterday. And then, tomorrow will be a big test for him. Is put the full pads on, get an inside drill, bang him around a little bit, and see how he feels.
What has been the thought process and the conversations, frankly, with you and him about? Let's be honest. This is a guy who has a future to think about. In this season, I'm sure he might be on the bubble. What's your advice to him? 2 games left for a 5-5 team versus his future.
I think I'd rather keep my conversations with Connor private.
Back left, Chuck.
Tom, just on the Connor subject real quick, how much did his injury affect what you wanted to do with the offense this season and forced you to maybe scale back some of the things you wanted to do?
A lot, but so did Elijah's injury and Andrew Beck's injury. Those were guys at positions that we were not deep at. Could we have handled a wide out or 2 going down? Certainly. But, to have those 3 guys go down, 2 of them for the season basically and 1 for the bulk of the season, was a big impact on the offense's development. I think it was a big impact, from the standpoint this year that, again, we're not where we want to be, but I think it's also a really good impact for the future too, and those guys that filled in for Connor, Elijah, and Andrew in Denzel Okafor, Derek Kerstetter, and Cade Brewer, those guys are going to be a lot better next year, having been thrown into the fire as they were, and they'll be so much stronger and bigger with a year's development in our program that we'll look back on it, and it's never a good thing, but we'll certainly find the silver lining in it.
On your right, Anwar.
Coach, I have 2 for you. Malik, does he have a virus or something? I feel like maybe he's come out of a game at least maybe the past 2 weeks. Is he all right? He sprained his toe in this game. He was battling the stomach bug that was going around pretty much our whole team the last couple weeks. I think it's going around the whole university, to be honest with you. But he battled that Thursday and Friday. But I think he felt okay on Saturday. But he sprained his toe, had to come off, get it examined and taped. Okay. Then thank you. The second one is just from an offensive philosophy standpoint. Can you maybe explain the rotation that you guys do at receiver, the rotation at running back, the difference between just saying, hey, these are our guys and these are who we put out versus the constant rotation that you guys do?
Well, I think I think, one, nobody's completely separated themselves at those positions. So there's a lot of deserving players to play. I think, to say that you're going to play 3 wide receivers the entire game, their legs would fall off as much running as they do, and the tempo at which we play and no huddle and all that. So I think that's pretty standard for most no huddle spread teams. And then at tailback, we're trying to figure out, which of those 2 true freshmen merit the most carries. I think Danny Young had 20 carries in the game, so I didn't feel that there was a lack of carries going to him as opposed to the other ones, and so it's more of a freshness thing and we don't have Ricky Williams, we don't have Roy Williams. We've got a bunch of good players that are performing really, really well right now, and a lot of them deserve to play.
On your left, Danny.
Dorian's off the depth chart, so I'm assuming he's out going forward. But do you have any updates on Gary and PJ? And also, if Connor's back, is Derek still going to be your right tackle, or Denzel and Tristan going to be in the mix for that?
Yeah, Dorian is out, fractured. The CT scan actually showed some other issues that he was having with his foot that he was actually playing through, which I thank him for. PJ is not going to be this week. He got out of his boot yesterday, and we're hoping to have him back for Texas Tech. And then, Gary practiced non-contact yesterday. Was diagnosed as a pretty good stinger. So as soon as a stinger, as I've learned over the years, is a trauma to the nerves in the neck, and different nerves heal at different rates, and so again, he can run around, do everything. You just can't bang on that nerve until it heals, and it could be a day or 2, it could be 4 or 5 days. But he was out there doing 7-on-7 non-contact stuff yesterday. And then the tackle rotation, if Connor's there, again, it'll be a big play it by ear situation, because this is a guy that hasn't played in the game in whatever it is, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, something like that. And so we've got to be cognizant of how his body feels throughout the course of the game. And then I think at right tackle, both those guys would be in the mix in terms of Nicholson and Okafor, and I think we'll see how we rotate them. I think it'd be difficult because of the lack of experience that Denzel has to move him from left to right. Might rock his world a little bit. So I would think the guy that Tristan would be there on the right side, maybe a little bit more than Denzel behind Kerstetter.
Middle, Trent.
Coach and Sam, obviously fully cleared from back. How do you envision the quarterback reps shaking out this week? Will you take reps?
Too early for me to tell anything. I think, these last 2 games, it's going to be, what do we need to win? And what do these guys do well in the game plan? Do we need to run the quarterback a little bit more and have more of a presence in the zone read game? Then, we'll play Sam a little bit more. If we got to throw the ball downfield and we got to get the ball out of our hands really quickly and some of the RPO stuff because of the zone coverages that we're seeing, then that's obviously right up Shane's alley. So I think as we see how the game plan develops, we'll know a lot more in terms of the number of reps. I would imagine, you'll see both of them at some point, but in what ratio, I don't know just yet. I haven't only watched a couple hours of film.
On your left, Cedric.
Tell me what your impressions of the secondary and what problems those will represent. He's a fine quarterback.
Yeah, he's the 4th leading passer in the country, and he's got some pretty talented guys around him. You know, he's got the Sills kid is leading the country in touchdown catches, and he's got a couple other receivers that are very high up in some categories. So I think what he presents might be no, there's a kid in Norman that's pretty good too, but and in Fort Worth. But he's along the lines of Mayfield and Hill in terms of he's really accurate throwing the football. He's a tremendous passer, but he can make you pay with his feet too. And he's as good as we played, and we've played some really good ones. And then I you know, how was the secondary? Inconsistent would probably be the best way to put it. I think, you know, again, everybody wants to say, oh, you had the ball thrown on you, so the secondary must have played bad, or you didn't stop the run, so the D-line must have played bad, or you couldn't run the football, so the O-line must have played bad. There's a lot of things that go into giving up yards in the pass game, and so you know, we did make some great plays, but 3 interceptions. You know, so to say that it was a bad game, I don't think is fair, but we lacked some consistency at times.
On your right, Joe.
Coach, what led into the decision to move Chris Warren to that tight end H-back role, and how do you assess how he played against Kansas?
I think the decision was led by obviously necessity. One, you know, we needed some more physicality at that position. We had, you know, decided that, you know, with the offensive line inexperience, that the 2 freshman running backs were going to probably get a lot more carries here these final half of the season because of their elusiveness a little bit and ability to break tackles. And so you've got a 6'2", 245, 250-pound kid that can run and bend, can catch the football, that you know, loves his team and is a great kid and is a hard worker. You know, standing him on the sideline is probably not his best role on the team. So we're still experimenting with it. Obviously, you know, that's a tough spot to put him in, you know, with just a few weeks left. Hey, go learn a new position. So we're, you know, we're very careful with what we're asking him to do on a week-to-week basis, and make sure that the package that we have for him is consumable by him and executable by him. But again, it was all of those things, you know, just and mainly it was Chris's attitude and effort and desire to win.
Right middle, Ed.
Coach, in your estimation, why is it so difficult to win in Morgantown? And are you glad it's 11 a.m. game versus a night game in West Virginia?
To answer the second one, absolutely. And not just for the atmosphere, but anytime you go on the road, especially on a plane ride, playing in the morning's good because you get to, you know, get back at a decent hour. We got back at 6 a.m. after we played USC, and so you know, that's never a good thing when you're talking about the student athlete well-being. And then I don't know. I've never played there, so or never coached there. I hear it'll be loud. I would imagine that it's you know, Morgantown is a bit remote in terms of travel to get there, but and they're really good. So I think, you know, the places that are really hard to play in this country usually revolve around teams that are really good.
On your left, Chuck.
Tom, you've referenced several times this season about how difficult it is to win games. Are you seeing the signs that this team is learning how to win after the last 3 years and struggles there? And how much more steps does this team have to take to kind of, you know, learn what it takes to win?
Well, we got to win one that we're not supposed to. You know, I think, you know, right now, save for the very first game, you know, we've won the ones that we're supposed to, and we haven't the ones that people said we weren't supposed to. And so I think that's got to be the next step as opposed to last year. I don't know anything about last year, but I did have a couple players tell me, hey, this game started off a lot like last year's game against Kansas, but this year there was never any doubt on the sideline that it was a couple bumps in the road there in the second and third quarter, but that we were gonna be just fine. And so I think that is a step in the right direction when your players actually are communicating that to you after the game. But I think the biggest next step, so yeah, are we learning how to win? Certainly. But the biggest next step is we got to win one of these road games against a top 25 team, that most people would think we don't have a chance at doing.
Middle, Roger.
Tom, you've talked about Antoine after the game, what he's meant. The players pretty heartfelt about their comments about him after the game. It seems like that's really special when your peers get it. Why do you think they feel so good for Antoine?
I mean, who wouldn't if you're around that guy as much as they are? I think probably the biggest thing is because they have seen firsthand what he's been through, and the ups and downs that, some of no fault of his, some of fault of his, but they've seen him persevere. And anytime you have a success story like that where you can go through all of the ups and downs of his career, you can be as disenfranchised as he was, and be given a second life, and then capitalize on that with his commitment and his hard work and his dedication. I think it's inspiring to the rest of our team, and he's a fun guy to be around. I think that's probably the biggest thing is when you have the story that he has, and he can inspire through firsthand experience, and then you throw on top of it just a great teammate and a likable guy. That's when the magic happens, as they say.
On your left, Chip.
Tom, did you have Shackelford, Sam, and Tennille on a bit of a pitch count Saturday night, coming off of the concussions? And is there anything specifically that you've been unable to do, like in the running game or anything, without Connor that you were able to do with him?
I think probably the only one of those three with a pitch count was Sam, because of the very minimal amount of contact that he got the week of practice. So we wanted to make sure that we just didn't throw him out there and have him bang around a bunch. But the other two guys, Shackelford and Tennille, they had gone through a full week of practice, so they were good. And maybe just the biggest thing is how strong Connor is, in comparison to certainly Derek and Denzel. And again, it's a youth thing. This is I love those two kids, and I think their future is extremely bright. But I saw Connor Williams, power clean, 395 pounds or something ridiculous like that, or 365, it was off the charts strong. And so I think just the inside run game presence has been difficult to manufacture without his strength in there.
Up front, Brian.
Tom, the last
I was going to ask you Saturday night. Was this another? Is this one of those you should see the other guy stories?
you should see the 9-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, really? I've had one of those too.
Exactly. None of the fight. You could ask Saturday night.
I wanted to keep it professional.
But this crowd.
I know.
Okay, serious face. The last 2 years, though, this team, quite frankly, has collapsed in mid-November and on, 2 5-7 finishes. How are you staying on top of them? Because to a huge majority in that locker room, getting to a bowl game is a big deal.
Yeah.
It would be a big deal. How do you keep them focused when let's be honest, I and all of us are getting emails, okay, who's going to transfer? You hear disgruntlement. How are you monitoring the disgruntlement factor, I guess, to keep them focused on attainable goals?
Well, the guys that are playing key roles for us usually aren't disgruntled, so I don't think there's an issue there. And I think what you said is real. I think we have a senior class, an experienced class that, although small, is very well respected. Nashawn Hughes and Poona Ford are as respected are as respected of a two-guy tandem in that locker room as you'll find in any locker room in the country. And so I really do think that there is a genuine desire for our guys to make sure that we get them to the postseason and that they can play one more game in the burnt orange and white. But I also think that, we also realize the potential of this team, knowing that we lost by 5 points to one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, and we lost by a field goal in overtime to one of the top teams in the country, certainly one of the best, if not the best, offenses in the country. So I think that desire to send those seniors out with a bang, as well as the confidence and hope that some of the games throughout the season have given us, I don't see any issue keeping them motivated.
In the back, Anthony?
Coach, what do you like about little Jordan Humphrey and that Wildcat, and what excites you about his catches and leaping ability? He's like leaping over everyone like a frog every week, it seems like.
Don't like the leaping part because it exposes the ball too much, so we've had some conversations about that. And in the Wildcat, I think it's, back, whatever it was, 8-10 years ago when the Wildcat first kind of started, it was so very, very new. And then people caught on, and it was like, well, just call a different defense. That's not the quarterback back there. And so if you give them time, the defense time to realize who's back there, kind of loses its effectiveness. So the one thing that we wanted to make sure that we did was, all of our H receivers are trained at doing that, at being in the game, and when Coach Beck wants to go to a Wildcat deal where, again, it's like running your quarterback without running your quarterback, because you do have a lead blocker, but it's not the quarterback carrying it, then we can hurry up and do it, and who's ever at the H receiver position gets back there, claps his hands, and takes a snap. So it's not, although little Jordan is really good at it because of his physical nature, and I'm sure his experience playing running back in high school has something to do with it too, but it's something that, goal line short yardage deals that we feel by going fast to it that we can maybe get an advantage.
Up front, Kirk?
10 games in your first season, what's your view of the Big 12 now as opposed to when you were at Houston? And do you see your program as something that can, emphasize great defense and maybe set yourself apart in this league like a TCU?
Yes, to your second part. I think, again, it'll be interesting to see how this year shapes out in terms of the national championship picture. But as I've said before, and I don't know if any of you fact-checked me or not, but I think I read a stat where since the inception of the BCS, only one team has won the national championship with defense outside the top 25, and that was Auburn with Cam Newton, and they were ranked 32nd. So I think if the goal, which it is and should be at the University of Texas, is to win national championships, I think you have to play great defense, and we are well on our way to establishing that and that culture. And my thoughts on the Big 12, I really didn't. I know it's probably, it sounds like coach speak, but it's so true. You're in such a tunnel when you're somewhere else. I had no brain cells to waste forming an opinion about a conference that didn't affect, me or my team. But what do I think of it now? I think when you have a senior quarterback and or a fourth-year junior quarterback, you got a chance in this league. And, everywhere from, I've said it before, I mean, you want to talk about quarterbacks, from Jesse Ertz to Baker Mayfield to Mason Rudolph to Kenny Hill to Will Greer, and then, oh, by the way, there's a kid up in Lubbock that happens to be third in the country in passing. So, these are some special quarterbacks. I'm glad a lot of them are seniors, to be quite honest with you. But the Big 12 it's tough to play great defense, but I think us and TCU have certainly found out that you can.
On your right, Herman.
Coach, when you were hired, right, wrong, or indifferent, you were expected to be the immediate savior of the program. You've talked to the players about trusting the process, but as you sit at 5-5, what's your message to a fan base that's trying to wrap their heads around where you guys are at the program and where you're headed?
Well, I think where we're at is not where we'd hoped to be. So that's, there's nobody associated with the University of Texas that that affects more than us, in terms of doing everything we can to make sure that we end this thing on a positive note. But in terms of the direction, I think we are headed in a very, very healthy, good direction. We're playing with a tremendous amount of effort, tremendous amount of intensity, physicality, and we have proven that when you can do those things, regardless of any deficiencies that you might have, regardless of losing 3 starters up front on offense, regardless of losing, the Doak Walker Award winner at tailback, regardless of, having to play musical chairs at quarterback because of injuries and both guys being somewhat inexperienced, that if you do those things, if you play with great effort, intensity, and physicality, you got a chance to win. And I think so when you look at the direction, it's exciting because we're not going to have to deal with some of the cards that we were dealt with this year. And even if we were, the development of the people that had to step in those roles is going to be 1 year ahead of where we were this year.
Last one on the left, Danny.
Tom, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what are some of the attributes that you didn't want to lose? Someone like Chris or someone like Kyle that you guys found different roles for them, whether Chris being the H-back or Kyle returning kicks. What are the things you didn't want to lose from them?
Well, with Kyle, it's definitely his toughness and his leadership ability. He's a really well-respected guy and didn't want to lose. Wanted to make sure that he had a role on this team. And the same with Chris. I think his physicality, his ability to combine a guy of that size with some bendability and some speed and athleticism were things that we're going to continue to make sure that we can find a role for them.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.